Okay, so this presentation is entitled Guide to Collecting West Point Camporee Memorabilia. So there's a lot of it out there. Really, lots of camporees over the years since 1963 has been a patch at every camporee. But this is just kind of a brief introduction into collecting the memorabilia. This is a pretty popular, really nationally and internationally attended event that occurs every year at Lake Frederick there. Nearby to West Point. So the opening title slide is the 2004 Camporee patch, the first West Point Camporee I attended, and behind it there is Lake Frederick with lots and lots of tents of all the campers there during one of the camporees. So kind of a brief history of what it's called the annual Scoutmasters Council camporee. So even though it's kind of known as the West Point camporee, the scout organization at West Point is actually called Scoutmasters Council, and it's led by cadets, typically that are elected into the club commander, executive officer, as well as deputy commander, and then several staff. And so that's populated by all the cadets, so they really plan and lead all of these events to include tours of West Point, scout days, sports, various other events that troops can come in and do. But really the big event every year is the Scoutmasters Council camporee. So it started first in 1961 as an idea from the club president, kind of coming out of the attendance of the 1960 National Jamboree and seeing the success there. And so they decided to start this program at West Point as a nationally attended camporee. And so the first camporees were held in 1961 and 62. There's approximately 300 scouts that attended each of these, and they were awarded participation ribbons. It wasn't until 1963 that the first patch was issued. So that patch is shown on the right of the slide there. The shield and sword, that's the West Point symbol really. And so on the top you have West Point camporee with just the simple date 63. So kind of a nondescript patch, but this is kind of the key piece for any West Point collection. Not a lot of these are known to still exist. So in 1964, they kind of started making a more descript patch. It doesn't have camporee on it, at least until 65, but you can see the year and West Point with the Black Knight as the mascot. So from 64 through 1971, they had kind of the standard round design, standard camporee patch size. They started Series 64, ran through 65 and 66. And so a common kind of confusion there is with the red 65 on the right in the middle, and then the bottom is the gray 66. These are confused because they don't have dates. So the red is 65, the gray is 66. And then there were several designs that included the helmet design again in 67, 68, and so kind of followed a series up until 1972. And this became a different size, different design. It's a small rectangular patch that had the crossed West Point Scout guide on it. These are some of the series. So the upper left is the 1976 bicentennial patch, and this is one of what's called the Steiner series, which started by a cadet at the time who had several designs actually over 3 of the 4 years he was there at West Point. And so this is one of those 3 in the Steiner series. In 1989, you had a patch that resembled what the cadets wear as their cadet shoulder patch. In 1995, on the right there, you have the armor triangle representing, at the time, I think both 1st Armored and 2nd Armored Divisions. And then the bottom left, you have the Special Forces patch there in 2001, and then the Ranger symbol there in the middle for the camporee patch in 2002. So there are several years that kind of followed military design. So kind of early on in the patches, they had a lot of the West Point influence to them, and that continued in the 70s and 80s, and then really in kind of the mid-90s through current, a lot of them have followed military patch designs. And that's shown here on the next slide. It's kind of a unique display that's put on by the L. Lee Scouting Museum out of New Hampshire. I think it's neat though because it shows what the military patch looks like and then what the cadet design, their patch look like. So several on there. It's not all of them, but a neat little history with each of these and kind of showing what they represent. So Necrochiefs. There wasn't a Necrochief until 1970. That's the silkscreen Necrochief there on the upper right. In the 70s and 80s, being close there to New Jersey with Chief Necrochief. A lot of these were the embroidered Chief Necrochief designs. Various tags were included in the bags. I've seen 2 different tags in some of the same years, so I'm not really sure the explanation there, but at least for most of these, it was kind of a single production run, as there weren't reorders, as it was just a single weekend event. And then in the 90s through 2001, most of these were just the camporee patch sewn to the Necrochief. There's a few in there that are a little bit different than that, but really embroidered Necrochief started again in 2002, and there on the bottom right is the second to last camporee Necrochief, and so it's the same patch design, but it's still fully embroidered in the Necrochief, and that's 2015. And then 2016 was the last year, at least up until current, that they issued a Necrochief for the camporee. A unique design, even though I said there wasn't multiple runs, really with just this being a weekend event, there was a unique time there in 1975 that, we think that the copyright has kind of become a current issue in scouting, it really hasn't. And so whether it was mixed signals when they were designing this, the cadets actually put Boy Scouts of America on their Camporee Necrochiefs in 75. This wasn't approved. I don't know how many of them got out there. And the more common one there is the bottom right, which in the scroll beneath West Point has U.S. Corps cadets. So I've circled the Boy Scouts of America in red. And so whether it's a mistake or an issue, the Boy Scouts of America is definitely a rarer one. So if you are collecting West Point memorabilia, it's definitely one to go after, with the common one there being on the bottom right. The introduction of rockers and tabs. So Bull Hill is a hike that Scouts have the opportunity to do as they go into the first day, being Friday. They can hike in with all their gear. It's a couple of mile hike, definitely a lot of uphill, not a lot of flat. So you're really hiking to the elevation. So even though you're going up, you don't have a lot of down on the backside. It's a good little hike, and cadets kind of man the hike throughout. There's medics and all that for safety, but the first commemoration, at least of this, with a patch started in 1986, and then following suit for the silver anniversary in 1987 was a rocker. Really, it's kind of a tab there above the patch there on the bottom, and being black and gold, it's kind of reminiscent of the Ranger tab, and I think that's probably purposeful. We'll talk that here in a minute with the light fighter tabs. But in 2006, the Scoutmasters Council issued the first patch since 1973 for jackets. That's shown there on the right, and below it there's a series of rockers for years. Not all of them are consecutive. You do have the 48 there, which is a little bit different in 2010. The next one is the 50th in 2012. They also issued a gold border jacket patch for it. So a series of light fighter tabs. This started in 2005 and was shaped to fit the patch. And there's several of these, which are the black and gold that are designed to go above the patch again, kind of like the Ranger tab or Special Forces tab. And so these are earned by basically hiking all of your equipment in. There's a series of these you can see of somewhat different designs. This is also included in the insignia guide that I put out that covers all of the years up through at least the issue of the tabs there in 2017. So lots of West Point memorabilia, as we've kind of established. However, beyond just the standard patches and Necrochiefs, there's been a hat pin in most of the Camporees since 1987. There's a series of Bull Hill pins. So we talked about the issuance of the 1986 patch there on the upper right. However, on the left side, you can see the sole with the horns, dated 92. Then there's another one up to the right that's got the hill on it with West Point 98, and then a 2001 hat pin. And then kind of the current design there in the bag, which is the actual bull, and says Bull Hill West Point. So those pins were awarded for hiking in Bull Hill. Still a little bit different than Light Fighter, different criteria there, but still a variation of the pins over the years that they've issued. And then the bottom left, typically these are confused Camporee patches. They're not. Well, I know they were available at the museum, at least in 77 and 78. They're probably available as souvenir patches for scouts or troops attending West Point for purchase, whether it's some of the Scout Nights or other events I had mentioned earlier. But they do follow the 1977 design, and so the far left there, fully embroidered, was available in the 1977 Camporee, and then the twill with embroidery on the right was available in 1978. And then just additional pieces of unique memorabilia. There's a little knit cap there on the right with the 2008 West Point symbol in it. So as I said, the Scoutmasters Council is made up of cadets. Fortunately, especially in today's time, there is sacrifice there. So the 2005 Camporee and then the 2013 Camporees were named in honor of two cadets who were members of the council, with the 2005 Camporee being named after Captain Johnson, who was actually the Scoutmasters Council commander. And so these are two patches that are unique in the fact that they were named for cadets who are also scouts who were killed in service after their graduation from West Point. And finally, a few slides of some outstanding displays by the LLE Scouting Museum. So I mentioned the Steiner series, and so he actually wrote 3 articles in the LLE Scouting Museum brochure or magazine they used to put out, and he ended up donating his collection that he had of West Point memorabilia. It's outstanding, and so there's a lot of great stuff that they have on display. On the upper left there, the West Point 63 Camporee patch, as well as in the middle there, the West Point Camporee armband from 1966, which I'm assuming is a staff armband, and then the left you can see the SMC patch. That stands for the Scoutmasters Council, and so that, after membership in the club for over a year or 2 years, that patch is worn on the cadet's gray jacket while they're at West Point. A few more of the displays. So here's all of the patches with the Necrochiefs beginning in 1970, and then finally this brings, I think that starts in 1994 and then goes all the way through 2016 with the Eagle's Head, reminiscent of the 101st Airborne Division, which kind of closes out the Necrochiefs and patches. There has been patches issued for 2018. You can see there the 82nd Airborne, 2019, which was the first 1st Infantry Division, and then there was no Camporee in 2020, unfortunately, due to COVID. Then some references here. So as I mentioned, Mr. Steiner had written 3 of these Scout Memorabilia, the LLE Scouting Museum publication. Then I also put together a West Point Camporee Insignia Guide, which if you email me, that's available. Just has all the patches. I'm expanding as I go. And then the Facebook group, U.S. military themed Boy Scout Memorabilia collectors, that has all the patches from all the Camporees on there and albums, as well as all the Necrochiefs, as well as several other albums of West Point Scout events outside the Camporee.
So how many people attend presently? You know, it sounds like it started off around 300. I know it's grown much bigger.
They kind of have ebbed and flowed, and I want to say I think they doubled it. So when I was going there, we typically were like 2,500 to 3,000. I think that they reached 5,000 here at some point in the last couple of years, and I think they've tapered it back down just based on not necessarily feasibility of the Camporee, but the logistics, parking, and getting everybody in. So there was a couple of weather events where they actually had to like bring in buses and bus people, and of course that gets into a sticky situation. So I think it's been over 5,000 at the Camporee, which is a lot of people.
So if somebody wants to go to the Camporee, I know it's invitational. So can you explain just a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is. So the current way to do it is go to the Scoutmasters Council Facebook page, and there's constant posts in there every year about the timeline for submissions. So really, if you want to go to the Camporee, typically it's every year in May. You want to apply. That process, I think, closes in December of the previous year. So for example, hopefully there will be one this year. I'm not sure what the timeline was, but if you want to go in 2022, that registration, I believe, opens in the fall of this year. So it will close probably in December of 2021, and then you'd be notified of attendance, hopefully in January, February, to give you several months' notice.